Hi everyone, Christina here. Welcome to another card video at my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to walk you through 5 different birthday cards, and this is a really long video. I went hog wild with the new release from Simon Says Stamp. There are so many fun birthday products in this release. In fact, all of these that I'm showing you today are ones that I contributed to the release. I designed these, and I've had these cards in the back of my mind since I designed all these products months ago. So here are some of the products from the release. I've got 2 stamp sets here that I'm going to be using today. One is called Big Birthday Greetings, and the other is Tiny Words Birthday. And Big Birthday Greetings also has a coordinating die set that not only has the cake, the candle, and the balloon images from the stamp set, but a new greeting that doesn't match with anything in the stamp set. Is just to have a die. And then I've got the confetti stencil over there, which will be super fun, and then those tiny little greetings. I'm also going to be using the rounded alphabet from Simon, and then I thought I was going to use this petal envelope die, but I ended up not using it, so you can ignore that part. So I'm going to be showing you how to use Distress Oxide inks in, I think, 6 different ways in this video. And in this first card, I'm going to be doing some really simple ink blending. In fact, this card starts off in one direction, and then I learn a valuable lesson near the end, and I have to improvise. So you'll want to make sure you watch this all the way through. In fact, I kind of felt like this entire set of cards was a comedy of errors because there were so many things that happened that I had to kind of think on my feet and change things up at the last minute. And I know you guys love that because whenever that happens in a video, I get comments and you guys are like, we love it when you show your mistakes and now you fix them. So for all of you out there who love to see that, I hope today's video helps you or, overcome those errors that you have in your own crafting. So I'm using the same 5 colors of distress ink for all of my cards today. I will add a hickory gray stamped portion on one card, but for the most part, everything is using these 5 colors. I've got peacock feathers, seedless preserves, picked raspberry, ripe persimmon, and mustard seed. And this is a great kind of rainbow combination of Distress Oxide inks. For that first blending, I just used the life-changing blender brushes from Picket Fence Studios. And now I've set it aside to dry. It's actually been a couple hours at this point between when I blended and now I'm moving on. And I checked that background to make sure it would be safe to add heat embossing powder because that Distress Oxide ink stays wet for a little bit longer. And so I wanted to make sure it was completely dry before I went on to stamping this. So I've got 2 greetings from the Big Birthday Greeting stamp set, and I'm stamping these in Versamark ink. I did prep the area with an anti-static powder tool, just in case any of that ink blending was completely dry. And then I sprinkled on white embossing powder. This is alabaster embossing powder from Burtis Monroe. Hit that with the heat tool until everything was smooth and melted. And then the edges just seemed like it needed a little something, so I ran my Versamark pad over the edges of that blended piece and then just dipped it into my little tub of the white embossing powder. This is going to add a really organic, almost a brush-stroked edge to this entire piece here. And I thought it looked really, really cool having kind of that rough edge because everything else looks very pristine. The very smooth blending, the sharp edges of the embossing powder greeting. I just thought it needed a little something on the edges. For my card base, I'm using some black onyx cardstock from Gina K, and I'm actually prepping a 5x7 card base because I wanted the black to show around the ink blended piece, but that ink blended piece was the exact size of an A2 card. It was 4¼ by 5½, and because of that, it didn't line up perfectly on the black card base. So I ended up cutting that card base down so that it was 5 inches wide by 6¼ tall. So here's where my valuable lesson comes in. Things that I've learned on this card. I thought, you know what? I've seen so many crafters use fun foam instead of all that foam tape, and I'm going to try it today. So I thought, okay, let's try it. I cut some fun foam down to the size that I needed. I put some Gina K Connect glue on the foam and then pressed it down onto my ink blended piece. Put more adhesive on the back, more of that glue, and then directly onto the card front. Now, I have done this in the past without any problems, and it's worked out beautifully. It's a great way so you don't have to use so much phone tape. But I set this aside probably for about half hour to 40 minutes, and look what happened. You can see where the moisture from that liquid glue has seeped up and added moisture onto that Distress ink, or the Distress Oxide ink. And as we know with Distress Oxide ink, it reacts with any moisture. So I was getting these ghosting images coming from the glue underneath. So I was trying to figure out how can I fix this, because I loved that smooth blending and how great it looked. And with those weird ghosting streaks on it, it was just bizarre. And so I ended up, okay, well, Distress Oxide inks are more opaque. They can blend over each other, so let's just try it. So I grabbed some ink blending tools this time, since they do put the ink down a little bit heavier than the blender brushes. And I just blended over those areas, tried to get rid of those ghosting images. And for the most part, it worked. And after I did all that blending, I cleaned up the white embossing powder with a dry cloth. I didn't want to add any more moisture, so I didn't use a baby wipe. I just used a dry paper towel. Now you can see for the most part that fixed everything, but I could still see those little ghosting streaks, and it was really bugging me. So I thought, you know what? Lean into it, add more moisture, make it look like it was on purpose. So I sprinkled some water into my hand with the Distress sprayer and then flicked it onto my card. And you can see how that Distress Oxide ink reacts with the water immediately. It's a really cool effect. So I sprinkled all that on, and then I grabbed a paper towel and pressed the paper towel over the top just to seep up some of that water and ink. And then you're left with this almost like a bokeh background. It's like a really ethereal sort of look. So even though this happened by accident and I didn't mean for this to go like this, I kind of like how it ended up, right? Let me know in the comments. Did you like it when it was just a smooth blend before, or do you like the water splatter on this? Let me know down in the comments which you liked more, because I kind of like both. I can't decide. So this is the first card all finished. Now, as I'm moving on to the second card, you're going to notice a few things. I actually jumped around quite a bit when I was making all these cards. So I edited them all together so they were more cohesive for each card, but here's where we are. For this next card, I'm going to start it with some ink blending again. And this time I have a smaller piece of cardstock, same colors, same order of blending, and I've got all that down. By the way, the surface that I'm blending on top of today is actually a media mat from Brutus Monroe, and I've affixed it to a cutting mat. If you're interested on how I did that, I'm going to have a bonus video up today as well. I'll have that linked in the top corner so you can see that. I'm really enjoying it. And I'll talk about why I like this particular slick surface for blending more than others I've tried in the past. I'll talk about that in that video. So you can click up in that corner and see it, the bonus video. All right, so now I've got the dies that I showed at the beginning of the video, and I'm cutting out happy in the large letters and then happy birthday out of the smaller ones. And I'm going to be adhering these onto the front of a white card base. Now, my plan for this card, this is the other card where things went awry. My plan for this card was to keep it very, very simple and just have these ink blended and die cut letters on this white card base and have it be really, really clean and simple. I'm going to be using a glue sponge for adhering all these letters. This is actually the first time I'd ever tried a glue sponge. I saw it in a few videos online. I'm like, I am intrigued by this. If it's going to make it easier to adhere die cuts, I am all for that. So I thought I'd give it a try. Now, I wrote out the word birthday to figure out where the center of the word would be. Turns out it's right in between the T and H. So I made a mark on my white card base where the center would be. And I also have drawn a line in pencil so I can get these words on, all these letters on perfectly. So I'm picking up each of these letters with a jewel picker I think it's from Marvy. And this This is also the first time I've used this tool before, and I'm in love with it. It makes picking up all these little die cuts so easy. And you can see how I just speed along adhering all of these little letters. The thing I noticed with the glue sponge is that is some really strong glue. It doesn't give you a whole lot of time to manipulate and wiggle it around. Like I tried to use that craft pick to kind of move that P because it was just tilted just a tiny bit. I was not able to get it to move. So here's where my mistake happened. I wasn't thinking ahead and I adhered that happy a little bit off to the left. Can you see that? It's not centered over the word birthday. And in fact, it goes past the letter B. It's kind of a weird spacing. The graphic designer in me is crying because this would have been so cool just by itself. So I thought, what can I do to make it look more intentional that those words aren't completely centered? I thought, you know what, let's stamp some candles. This is the candle from the stamp set, the big birthday greetings. So I stamped the candles in some VersaFine Onyx Black ink, just over and over and over. And then I'm going to color the candles with Distress Oxide ink. This is another way to use your oxide inks. I'm smushing them onto an Art Impressions watercolor palette. And then I'm picking up the color with this blender brush from Tombow. This is one of the clear blender brushes that comes in each one of their sets of markers. Whenever you buy a set of Tombow markers, you always get this clear marker, which is great for blending. And not only with the other Tombow markers, but you can use it with your inks and kind of transfer the color to your project. So I'm picking up each one of these colors and then coloring onto the candles. Now, when it comes to switching between the colors, the only thing you have to do is scribble onto a piece of scratch paper and it cleans all the color out of that blender brush. If you think of it, the blender brush is almost like a clear marker. And so all you have to do is just kind of work the color out of that marker and then it's all clear again. So I'm finishing up coloring all of these candles, and I think this is a really fun way to use your Distress Oxide inks. I haven't used them in quite this way before, and it worked out great. Now, because I did add the black candles down below, it didn't quite look like it belonged. So I thought I'd take a black marker. I'm just using a Sharpie marker, and I added a shadow to the letters. There's a little mistake in there. If you catch it, your eye's pretty good. But added the shadows and then some little tiny dots. Gives it more of like a sketched look. I think it looks really fun. So now I'm taking some kind of gloss crystal, I think it's called Crystal Glaze from Nuvo, and I'll have it linked down below in the supply section along with all the other supplies I've used today. I don't quite remember the exact name of it, but I just added that over all of these die cut letters. And then to clean up any that was kind of oozing off the edge, I just used the corner of my craft knife and just scraped that away. And that cleans it up perfectly. So now I have all those glossy letters over that greeting. I think it turned out so cool, completely different than what I planned, but I still really love it. Okay, so here's another card that kind of went in a direction I wasn't expecting, and I'll tell you what that is when we get there. Starting out with the confetti stencil. And I'm going to be adding some colorful ink blending onto this stencil. So I'm taping the paper to the stencil. And this is going to make it so it doesn't move around or move away from the stencil while I'm blending. Using those same colors, and I'm going to just blend each color in a section and overlap them a little bit so that they blend. And I want just a bunch of color all over this confetti background. I want it to look like a really fun party with all of these colors. So another thing I want to mention to you guys, particularly about stencils, is how I clean them. You're going to see in a little bit that I use this stencil on a couple different backgrounds. And on this one, I'm ink blending. And on the other one, I'm going to be using some Versamark. So I'm going to show you how to clean the stencil really well after I do the Versamark. But for now, when I cleaned off this stencil, I just used a baby wipe, and then I also sprayed it a little bit with some water and ran it under some water in my sink, and I got all that ink off. Okay, for this card, I'm going to have a little gathering of balloons. So I decided I would stamp each one in a different color of Distress Oxide ink. Distress Oxide inks stamp beautifully. They're great for stamped images. And this is where it's very different from the original Distress inks. The original Distress inks don't give you a nice solid image. It tends to beat up on the clear stamps or rubber stamps, but Distress Oxides coat the stamp so great. They're great for stamping. So this is another way to use your Distress Oxides. I'm going to cut out each one of these balloons using the coordinating die. And I'm just holding those dies in place with some micro pour tape. And then I'm going to run it through my Gemini Junior machine. In fact, this was the first time that I'd used my Gemini Junior machine. I bought one from HSN last week. Everyone's been raving about their Gemini Junior die cutting machines. And I was holding out for a long time. I'm not sure why, because I really love it. And I'm really enjoying it. So if you guys want to know some more info about the Gemini Junior and why I finally bit the bullet and got one, let me know. Let me know down in the comments if you want to see that. Okay, so I'm using some heavy vellum today. I've used this in the past. I think I picked this up in Bermuda last year. It's been a year since I got this vellum. And I'm going to score it a little bit larger than 5.5 so that I can eventually trim it to the front of the card. And now I'm going to arrange my balloons. I'm just going to place them so I know exactly where they need to be. And then I'm taking the Let's Get This Party Started greeting stamp from the Big Bold Birthday. Maybe is it Big Bold Birthday? I can't remember. The big stamp set at the very beginning of the video. And I'm going to stamp that in Versamark ink after prepping it with an anti-static powder tool. I'm going to heat emboss this in white heat embossing powder. It's going to be a very subtle greeting right on top of this vellum, kind of like white on top of a very pale gray. It's going to be very, I guess subtle is just the perfect word for this. It's going to be very subtle. You won't be able to see it unless it's in the light just perfectly. It's going to look really cool on top of the colorful background. So I'm heat setting this with my heat tool, moving it around, making sure I don't stay in one spot too long. That's kind of the trick for embossing on vellum and having it not kind of warp on you. So now I'm going to trim off the back of this. I thought I would have the vellum go all the way wrapped around the back of the card, but then I realized I didn't need it quite that long. So I'm just giving myself a little flap and putting some Tombow Extreme adhesive on that flap. And then I'm lining it up with the corner or the fold of the card and then pressing down and adhering that. Now you notice it hangs off the front of the card. So I'm going to take my ruler and a craft knife and just cut off the excess of that vellum. So it's the perfect size for the front of the card. To adhere the balloons, I'm running them through my Xyron Create-A-Sticker machine, and I'm using this particular adhesive on the back of these balloons because I don't want the adhesive to show on the other side of the vellum, because you will be able to open that top layer of the card and see the back of the vellum. So I didn't want that to be obvious with all the adhesive. So I decided to make these into stickers where there is adhesive on the entire surface of the back of the balloons. Then took a ruler and that same black Sharpie that I used before, and I drew onto the vellum the lines for the balloons. So that finishes this card. You can see how cool that is. It's showing the color underneath when the vellum is pressed down, but then when you pull away, you get that really cool greeting. I love how this one turned out. It's a really, really different card for me. So here is the next card. I'm going to be doing some rainbow stamping, and Distress Oxide inks work so well for this technique. Before I get to the stamping, I'm going to do some more stenciling. This time I'm using some Fog cardstock from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm using some Versamark ink and pressing that into the stencil, making sure I get a nice wiggle on that ink pad. And then I'm sprinkling on some white embossing powder. Once again, this is that same Burgess Monroe Alabaster embossing powder. And I'll hit that with the heat tool until everything is melted. So now I'm going to show you cleaning that stencil. I have this really shallow bristled brush. It's actually a nail brush with a little bit of dish soap on it. And I just gently scrub over the surface of that stencil, and then I'll rinse it really well in water. And that's how I clean all my stencils when they have a lot of junk on them, like glitter paste, things like that. I do it in a sink, and that cleans it up really, really well. And if you have any Versamark ink that's stubborn and staying on your stencil, use a little bit of stamp cleaner. I like Ultra Clean Stamp Cleaner from Hero Arts or the Stamp Cleaner from Simon Says Stamp. Either one of those are ones I've used personally. I'm sure there are other cleansers out there, but those are the ones I've used, and I would really recommend those. And you can just spray that on the stencil and then scrub it with that brush and rinse it really well. Okay, so now I'm going to do some rainbow stamping. And the whole idea behind this is you're going to be using different colors of ink and stamping sections of your stamp. So this really large greeting is going to be great for this. So I put on that peacock feathers in that bottom corner. I'm going to take a paper towel and kind of dab and wipe away some of that color right along that edge, and then I'll stamp down. Each time I switch colors, I'm going to reposition my cardstock in my MISTI, making sure that it's right down in that bottom corner because I want to make sure it's always in the same spot. Moving on to the next color, Seedless Preserves. I'm kind of tipping the ink pad, so I'm only applying color with the edge of the ink pad. And I'm putting it right above that blue shade. And then I'm going to take my paper towel and dab off both the bottom of the purple area and the top, because those are the areas where it's transitioning to different colors. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp that down. And then you can see how it transitions into the purple. And it's kind of cool because it's a more opaque ink, it kind of gets those streaks in it from where you dab off the paper with the paper towel. I think it's a really cool effect. So now I'm using Picked Raspberry, making sure my paper's in that corner well, and then stamping down. Okay, so when you have a lot of colors like this, when it comes to rainbow stamping, you want to make sure you plan enough space for all of your colors. I have 5 colors I'm working with today, and these worked out great for the large image here. In fact, you don't have to have a super big image like this to do rainbow stamping. You could do just a grouping of smaller stamps. I think that looks really, really cool. For another example of rainbow stamping, I'm going to include a video up in the top corner. You can click over. That's a really fun rainbow stamping video. Okay, so I'm pressing down with my mustard seed. I did white persimmon and mustard seed, and then all of that stamping is complete. And I think it looks really cool, and I like that you can see kind of like that rough brush stroke texture. Using my craft knife again and my ruler to trim out this piece so that there's about 1/4 of an inch around the entire image. Now remember that light gray background that I made earlier with the white confetti? I'm going to adhere that to a white card base. I could have made the entire card base out of that gray cardstock, but I didn't want to, I wanted to save that gray cardstock, that fog cardstock from Simon. I'm running out of it. I didn't want to use it for the entire card base. So I adhered that with some Tombow Extreme adhesive. And then I adhered my rainbow stamped piece using some foam tape, and I was not shy with the foam tape. I wanted it to coat that area as much as I could. So I'm going to press that down onto my card fronts, and then I realized I made a mistake. And you're going to know exactly what this is. I know you guys have done it. I put it on my card upside down. So thankfully I hadn't pressed it down too much, so I was able to pull it up without tearing the paper, and turn that card base around and then adhere it down again. Tell me you guys have done that. I'm not the only one, right? You guys have done that before? Let me know in the comments down below. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the last and final card. And this one is all just stamping. It's a super simple card. I think you guys are really going to love it. And I'm starting out by prepping my card base. This is some white cardstock. This is Neenah Classic Crest Solar White, 110-pound cardstock. And in that big, bold birthday greeting stamp set, there's like a banner that says happy, and each little section of the banner is a separate stamp. So you can stamp them in different colors. So I'm going to stamp each one of these in a different color of Distress Oxide ink. And to aid me in making sure I have these all stamped along a line perfectly, I just used a pencil just to draw a little line there. I'll erase it later. So I'm stamping all along here, and if you want to be really precise, you could get these lined up perfectly, but I knew I wasn't going to be that lucky, so I just leaned into the wonkiness and let these sort of be a little bit wonky as they're stamped. and then put that larger birthday greeting at the bottom below the happy. And this is where I bring in that other color of Distress Oxide ink. This is Hickory Smoke, and I'm stamping that right below. I moved on to a MISTI tool instead of an acrylic block because this is a larger grading stamp, and I wanted to make sure that I had a really good impression. And when stamps get larger and larger, that's when I use my MISTI tool more and more. Especially, or also if they're very tiny like this. This is the Tiny Words Birthday Greeting Stamp Set, and I'm going to be stamping this little itty bitty line in some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. So put it at the very bottom, barely tapping the door of my MISTI so that I can get a really fine lined stamped image. Now using an eraser to erase the line there. This is an eraser from Tombow. It's almost like a mechanical pencil where you can press down the top of the eraser pen and it puts more eraser out the bottom. So that is my final card for today. All 5 cards using Distress Oxide inks and the new release from Simus' Stamp. I hope you guys enjoyed all of these fun birthday cards. I had so much fun making these. I think I spent about 3 hours in total making all 5 cards, and it was so much fun. So on screen, I've got some more birthday cards for you guys to check out. Today, well, I put this up on the May 14th, but on May 15th, it is my birthday. So this is sort of fitting that I'm doing all these birthday cards on my birthday. So yay. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I will catch you guys in another card video very, very soon.